Okay guys, welcome. Today we're going to take a look at my current everyday carry knife. We're going to take a look at the Cold Steel American Lawman in CTS XHP steel. A few of the preliminary things I love about this knife, and then we'll get it onto the tabletop. The first thing is the blade length to handle ratio. As I've told you, I have larger than normal hands, and it has a multi-position handle. So it's I believe a 3.5 inch blade, but you can choke up on it and you can see there's a lot sticking out, or you can hold it in the normal position and it's just flush with the bottom of my hand. The next thing I like about it, I don't know if you can see that in camera, this thing is very thin. It's very slim. It carries super well. You forget that you're carrying it. Another thing I like about it is the lockup. It's the Cold Steel Triad lock. There's no side to side, no play whatsoever. It's possibly stronger than certain fixed blade knives out there. So it's not the quickest to open and close, but it's like a traditional lock back. You have the lock back here, so there's multiple ways to close it. Maybe some fancier than others. Okay guys, a little closer up look at this knife. I believe this is the Coyote Tan color. The handles are G10. It comes with a second pocket clip so you can have left or right carry. But it's only 2 position because of the lock and other reasons. You can attach the pocket clip up here. To me, that's not a big deal. I believe the coating is called DLC. It's kind of a silly acronym in my opinion, but I believe it stands for diamond-like coating. But for an everyday carry knife, I think a coating is a great idea. It's held up decently fine, and what I like about it is, unlike certain other knife makers out there, this coating is not sandpaper like. It's very slick. So the main reason I don't like coatings on a lot of knives is because it creates more friction, more drag. So I like this one because it's almost like a bluing. It's very smooth. It's maybe even has a lower friction coefficient than a plain edge knife. Who knows. It also helps with corrosion, discoloration, stuff like that. Because there's no open pores, it's also easier to clean, at least in my opinion and in my findings. It's not a full flat grind. If you can see, there is a flat area up here, and you might think it's like a saber grind or whatever, and it might be hard to see on camera, but it's actually a hollow grind. It's like a concave grind. So if you pull your hand downward, you feel it go in. It's a little concave. It's called a hollow grind. It has you can see the thumb studs right there. It's slightly bigger on one side and smaller on the other side. There's a flat tip there, so you can unscrew it and reverse it if you're a lefty. But pretty much what that means is when you're right-handed, the larger thumb stud, is on the dominant side. This Cold Steel knife, along with almost all their other folding knives, uses the Triad lock. And I'm not going to get into the geometry and whatnot. Frankly, a lot of you guys probably don't care, or you guys already know what the Triad lock is. Suffice to say, I believe it's probably one of the strongest folding knife lock mechanisms in existence today. What I'm trying to say is, at least for me, this thing hasn't broke. I have a box full of broken folding knives. The majority of them are liner locks. So when I'm looking for new knives, I tend to not buy liner lock knives. That's not to say that liner locks are garbage, liner locks suck and all that stuff. All I'm saying is, in my experience, they have broken, failed, have become inoperable. A folding knife's never going to be as strong or as simple as a fixed blade knife, But in my opinion, you might as well get as close to that mark as possible. So the Triad lock and the like Access lock from Benchmade, and then Spyderco, they have their roller bearing lock, which is a Benchmade Access lock pretty much, are pretty much the main lock mechanisms I look for in folding knives. Is a 3-inch blade. So the cutting edge is 3 inches. If you measure from the tip to right here, you're talking 3 3/8 of an inch, or 3 1/4 inches. So that's important to some people because some law enforcement officers might not only, they might measure the whole blade. The handle is 4 3/4 inches, and then if you include the little part of the blade here that's kind of functions as part of the handle, you're looking at right at 5 inches. The width open is the widest part is 1 3/4 inches, and the thickness, which is one of my favorite things about this knife, you're looking at right at 3/8 of an inch, 10 millimeters. Got a lanyard down here. Some people love lanyards. On a folding carry knife, I couldn't really care one way or another, but it's the dimension of paracord. So if you're into like making paracord lanyards and stuff like that, paracord will be able to thread through this. We talked about the handle. I like the length of it. For being such a small, short blade, having a big handle makes it at least feel more capable of doing hard labor. I haven't torture tested and like put this like just abuse this knife and used it outside of its intended use, but I've used it for like countless like daily work that tons of people would do. You know, opening boxes, cutting cardboard, cutting paper, sharpening like carpenter pencils, cutting burlap, cutting sisal twine, cutting rope, cutting paracord, cutting bank line, even cutting some wires, cutting like saran wrap, the like packaging, stuff like that. I even used it to cut plastic or synthetic bands that go around pallets of merchandise. I've cut zip ties, I've, you know, duct tape, stuff like that. I've used this even to like strip wires and stuff like that. So, real quick, I want to talk about the steel, CTS XHP. It's new to me, but I like everything about it. A lot of my other knives are either S30V, CPM S30V, or S35VN, and like CPM is kind of one manufacturer of steel, and then CTS is like Carpenter Tool Steel. I believe that's what it stands for. So CTS and CPM are relatively similar. They're just made by different brands, I guess. But CTS, you guys have probably heard of like CTS BD1 and CTS XHP, and there's a couple other ones. But suffice to say, this still has a relatively sharp edge. Okay, we'll just see right here. Okay, so it's not taking hair off, it's just taking some dry skin off. When I got it, it was razor sharp and it was hair shaving sharp. It could slice through paper and all that stuff. I've sharpened this a couple times. It sharpens pretty easily. I was quite surprised. I always judge kind of a steel on how long it holds an edge versus how easy it is to reclaim that edge. And what surprised me about this CTS XHP, like I said, I've never owned another knife in it, but it stayed, its edge retention or its ability to stay sharp, it stayed sharp for a really long time, the factory edge, for a really long time. And then I didn't let it get to extreme dullness, and then I used my leather belt and just used that as a sharpening stone and drew the knife back and forth a couple times, and it was back to shaving sharp. And I was able to do that a couple times, and then it wasn't really working that well. So I just got it on the stones, and I used a really fine stone, and I just barely touched it up. I barely sharpened it. Maybe 10 minutes of sharpening. You know, on the grand scale, that's not that long. And it was back to really, really sharp. So I'm not saying like this steel is awesome. You know, I'm not saying this is better than other steels out there. I'm just saying that this steel, it retained an edge for a really long time. And then normally steels that hold an edge for a long time, when you come back to sharpen it, it's a nightmare to put an identical edge back on it because it's so freaking sharp, or it's hardened to a high Rockwell or whatever. But this one, it's a really funny steel, but that's probably why a lot of people like it. We'll weigh it. It weighs 114 grams, 114. I'm reading it upside down. It looks like 114, or exactly 4 ounces. 4.0 ounces. So that's pretty cool. It's a nice even number. Let's just do it once more. 4.0 ounces. We talked about some of the things you won't see in the online pictures and stuff like that. The slimness, the handle length, you know, like, and I wear like size 2X gloves. So my main gripe, real quick, I want you guys just to look, and it has to do with ergonomics. So some of you guys might be able to spot it already, but let me just flip it around. Again, it has to do with ergonomics, and maybe some of you guys have this knife or can look at this knife and you guys are already typing in the comments, you know what the drawback is. This knife is great, it has a lot of positives. But there's one area where, in my opinion, any carry knife I'm going to carry daily, I want it to be comfortable to use. So this knife is really comfortable to carry, but it's very uncomfortable to use. What do I mean? Well, it'll be hard to display on camera. Maybe if I flip it like this. So you can see index finger, middle finger, and then my back fingers. Fit in those grooves great. You grip it, and again, every hand's different. The harder you grip it, the more force this finger wants to come towards this finger. Okay? See that movement there? But because of this peak right here, it's like separating. So when using this extended, this thing is really uncomfortable. What I like to do with knives is just squeeze them really hard. You know, you guys can see squeezing pretty hard, okay? And then, I don't know if you can see, but this irritates right between your fingers right here. And then because it's so slim, it's not comfortable. It's I think there's a dividing point between having it able to carry good and be comfortable in the hand. The slimness of the handle I can get over, if that was the only problem. But this whole finger notch right here, it makes this knife really uncomfortable. Moving back here, even more so, because, okay, I'm holding the knife, I'll leave the knife and I'll just open my hand. You can see that peak there is digging straight into my middle finger. This peak here digging straight into the middle finger. I'll do it again. Okay, so this is how you hold the knife. Okay, see the peak right there? It's pointing directly at the middle of your middle finger. So I might shoot an update video, but what I'm going to attempt, because I like all the other aspects of this knife, but what I'm going to take this to my belt sander. The handles are G10, so I'm going to take this to my belt sander and I'm going to take this peak right here off, and I'm also going to smooth this out and make it a more gradual curve, not such a, you know, like acute angle. So I'm going to kind of change the geometry of the handle a little bit, and I think that will make it more comfortable. Speaking about the texture of the handle real quick, I know I'm running out of time, but speaking about the texture of the handle, I heard a lot of people say that the Cold Steel G10 checkering or texturing on their G10 is like really violent and really rough. That wasn't the case, and maybe it has smoothed up a little bit, but even when I bought it, I remember the first thing I'm like, how rough is that G10? To me, maybe I just have like calluses built up or something like that, but it wasn't rough whatsoever. Not to say that it was smooth, but hopefully you can hear that. It does grip, but it does not tear up your hands. One last thing I want to note, if you can see the black coloring, the DLC coating or whatever, or maybe that's not what's used on the pocket clip, who knows, but you can see the paint or the coating is already wearing off a little bit. Some people like straight stainless, some people like black. I couldn't care one way or another, but I will tell you that if you want the black, don't expect it to stay black for that long. I've been carrying this quite a bit, but you know, I'm a normal user just like you guys, and the coating's already starting to come off. I like the look of that. It makes it a little more, you know, rough and tumble, stuff like that, a little more distressed. And then I'm sure you can buy replacement pocket clips. So all in all, you know, I'd give this knife a 7 out of 10. Mainly because of the handle ergonomics. It's not that comfortable. Everything else about this knife I like. So, like always, if you like this review, make sure to give it a big thumbs up. If you own this knife or plan on buying this knife, feel free to comment below and ask me any questions about it, and I'll try and answer them to the best of my abilities. If you like this video, unlike all other YouTube channels out there, I'm not going to ask you for your support and your subscription. What I encourage you to do is go back to my homepage and watch any of my current videos or any of my other videos, and if you like them, then at that point I encourage you to subscribe. This was a quick review on the Cold Steel American Lawman in CTS XHP. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll catch you on the next video.